The arrival. The sky over the distant planet of Mirath was painted in hues of emerald and gold. Beneath its swirling clouds lay a village carved into the towering cliffs, where the alien tribe of Mirath lived. They were known for their sharp vision, a gift that defined their survival in the harsh landscapes of their world. But among them was Vera, a girl born without sight. Vera's blindness made her an outcast. She was a mystery to her people, a source of whispered mockery. "What use is a blind girl in a tribe like ours?" the elders would say, shaking their heads. But Vera didn't let their words break her spirit. She had learned to live in darkness and had discovered ways to see that no one else could understand. One ordinary evening, everything changed. A loud roar echoed across the sky, followed by a fiery streak of light. The villagers rushed out of their homes, staring in awe and fear as a strange object crashed into the nearby valley. Smoke billowed, and the ground trembled under their feet. Vera felt the vibrations through the earth. Her sensitive ears picked up the faint hum of machinery and a sharp hiss of steam. Someone has arrived, she whispered to herself. Her heart raced. While the others saw this as a potential threat, she felt an odd pull, as if destiny itself had landed in her backyard. The tribe elders gathered quickly, debating what to do. "It could be dangerous," one said. "We should send our warriors to investigate," another added. But before any decision was made, a figure emerged from the valley. A tall, armored man limped into view. His suit was battered, and his face was pale with exhaustion. He was human, a species the Nurith had only heard of in distant stories. The man raised his hands, trying to show he meant no harm. "My name is Ethan," he said, his voice firm but strained. "My ship, it crashed. I need help to repair it." The villagers exchanged suspicious glances. They didn't trust outsiders, especially one who appeared so different. The elder stepped forward. "Why should we help you? What can you offer us in return?" Ethan hesitated. "I can trade knowledge, technology, resources from my ship." The elder's eyes narrowed. "We don't need your technology. If you want our help, you must prove your worth. Tomorrow, you will face our trials." Ethan nodded reluctantly, though his body screamed for rest. He didn't have much of a choice. Hidden in the shadows, Vera listened closely. She had been warned to stay away, but curiosity burned inside her. She knew the trials were deadly, designed to test the strength and cunning of Nurith warriors. Ethan didn't stand a chance. Later that night, when the village was quiet, Vera slipped away. She navigated the winding paths with ease, her heightened senses guiding her. She reached the edge of the valley, where Ethan sat by the wreckage of his ship, trying to make repairs. "Who's there?" Ethan asked sharply, turning to face her. "I am Vera," she said softly. "I came to help you." Ethan frowned, confused. "A child? What could you possibly do?" "I am not a child," Vera replied, a hint of defiance in her voice. "And you will need me if you want to survive." Ethan studied her for a moment, noticing her cloudy eyes. "You're blind," he said bluntly. "And yet I found my way here," she countered. "I hear what others cannot. I feel what others ignore. If you let me, I can guide you through the trials." Ethan was skeptical. A blind alien girl offering to guide him. It sounded absurd. But as he looked at her determined face, he realized he didn't have a better option. "All right, Vera," he said. "But if this is a trick—" "It's not," she interrupted. "Trust me, or you will not make it." As the two planned under the stars, Vera revealed her unique ability. She could see through sound and vibrations, creating a mental map of her surroundings. It was a skill she had honed in secret, a skill her tribe dismissed as nonsense. Ethan listened in awe. "You might be the key to surviving this," he admitted. But Vera wasn't helping him for his sake alone. Deep down, she saw this as her chance to prove her worth, to show her tribe that she was more than her blindness. As the night grew darker, an unspoken bond formed between them. Two outcasts from two different worlds, united by a shared goal: survival. Little did they know, the trials ahead would test them in ways they could never imagine. And the secrets they uncovered would change both their lives and the fate of the Neurith tribe forever. A secret ally. The morning sun rose over Myrath, casting long shadows across the rocky village. Ethan stood at the edge of the training grounds, his body tense as he prepared for the first trial. The villagers surrounded him, their sharp eyes filled with skepticism and disdain. "He doesn't belong here," one of the males muttered. "This outsider won't last through the first test," another sneered. Ethan clenched his fists, determined to prove them wrong. But deep inside, he knew the odds were stacked against him. The trials weren't designed for humans. They were meant to showcase the physical prowess of the Neurith warriors. He was outmatched, and he knew it. Just as the first elder raised his staff to signal the start of the trial, a soft voice whispered from the shadows, "Stay low. Move 3 steps to the left." Ethan's eyes darted around, searching for the source. "Vera," he murmured under his breath. "Quiet. They must not see me," Vera's voice replied, calm but firm. "Do as I say if you want to survive this." Ethan hesitated for a split second but obeyed, crouching low and shifting to the side. The trial began, and a flurry of sharp projectiles shot through the air. Ethan's movement allowed him to narrowly avoid the first volley. The crowd gasped in surprise. "How did he see that coming?" a villager whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He focused on Vera's instructions. "Duck now. Roll to your right." Her voice was steady, precise. She guided him through the maze of traps and obstacles, as if she could see every danger before it happened. Ethan began to trust her instincts completely. In the crowd, the tribe's males watched with growing suspicion. One of them, a brash warrior named Korath, narrowed his eyes. He noticed Ethan tilting his head, as though listening to something or someone. "Who's helping him?" Korath growled. Meanwhile, Vera stayed hidden behind a cluster of jagged rocks, her senses fully attuned to the trial. She could hear the faint hum of the traps resetting, the subtle shift in the air before a blade swung, and even the change in Ethan's breathing as he pushed himself to his limits. "You're almost there," she whispered. "The exit is 10 steps ahead, but there's a pitfall to your left. Jump at my signal." Ethan sprinted forward, trusting her completely. "Now," Vera shouted, and Ethan leaped into the air, landing safely on solid ground. The crowd erupted into murmurs of disbelief as he emerged from the trial, battered but alive. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. "He completed the first trial," one said reluctantly. "But how?" another questioned. "No human should have survived that." Vera smiled from her hiding spot. For the first time, she felt a flicker of pride, not just for herself, but for Ethan. As the crowd dispersed, Korath lingered, his sharp gaze scanning the area. He had heard enough to suspect the truth. A blind girl guiding a human. He muttered to himself, "Unthinkable." That night, Vera met Ethan near the wreckage of his ship. He was bruised and exhausted but alive. "You did well," she said softly. Ethan smirked, wiping sweat from his brow. "I wouldn't have made it without you. But they're getting suspicious. How long do you think we can keep this up?" "As long as we need to," Vera replied. "You can't do this alone, and neither can I." Ethan frowned. "Why are you helping me, Vera? Your tribe clearly doesn't trust me, and they don't seem to value you either." Vera hesitated, her cloudy eyes staring into the distance. "Because they need to see my people. They think I'm useless because I'm blind. They don't understand what I can do. Helping you survive will prove them wrong." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding her resolve. "Then we'll prove them wrong together," he said. But as they spoke, a shadow moved in the distance. Korath stood silently, watching them from afar. His suspicion had been confirmed, and a cruel smile spread across his face. "This will be interesting," Korath whispered to himself before disappearing into the night. Unbeknownst to Vera and Ethan, their alliance had already made them targets, and the trials ahead would only grow more dangerous, not just because of the obstacles, but because of the enemies lurking within their own ranks. The Trial of Fire. The morning air was thick with tension as the villagers gathered around the trial arena, an ancient stone structure surrounded by jagged cliffs. The second trial, known as the Trial of Fire, was infamous for its difficulty. Only the strongest warriors of the Nurith tribe had ever survived it. Ethan stood at the edge of the arena, staring at the massive labyrinth before him. Columns of fire erupted unpredictably from the ground, their flames licking the sky. Walls shifted, creating new paths and dead ends. Hidden traps lay in wait, ready to catch anyone who hesitated. "The human won't make it past the first corner," Korath said with a smug grin. The other warriors laughed, their confidence in the trial's cruelty unshaken. Ethan tightened his grip on the crude shield the elders had given him. He glanced around, searching for any sign of Vera. She had been his unseen ally in the first trial, but now, with so many eyes watching, he feared she wouldn't risk helping him again. "Begin," the elder shouted, slamming his staff into the ground. The arena erupted into chaos. Columns of fire roared to life, and the maze began to shift. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped forward, trying to focus on the shifting patterns of the flames. Left came a faint whisper in his ear. Ethan's head snapped up. It was Vera. Somehow, she had found a way to guide him again. "Move now," she said, her voice urgent. Ethan obeyed without question, diving to the left just as a fire trap exploded behind him. The crowd gasped, their laughter turning into stunned silence. "How is he doing this?" one of the warriors muttered. Vera's voice came again, steady and calm despite the danger. "The flames rise in patterns. Listen to the sound of the air. They'd roar a second before they ignite." Ethan strained his ears, focusing on the rhythm she described. For the first time, he noticed it, a faint hiss that preceded each eruption. He began to move with more confidence, dodging flames and traps with uncanny precision. But the maze was relentless. The walls shifted faster, and the flames grew higher. Ethan's body ached from the heat, and his movements slowed. "You're close to the center," Vera said, her voice tight with urgency. "But there's a hidden pit ahead. Jump when I say." "Enough," a loud voice boomed. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. Korath had stepped forward, his sharp eyes scanning the arena. "Someone is helping him," Korath declared. He pointed to the cliffs overlooking the arena. "Find them." The warriors began searching the cliffs, climbing the rocks and inspecting every crevice. Vera's hiding spot was no longer safe. She could hear their footsteps drawing closer. "Vera," Ethan whispered under his breath. "Keep going," she replied. "You're almost there." "But what about you?" "I'll be fine. Just survive." Ethan gritted his teeth and moved forward, using everything Vera had taught him. He jumped over the hidden pit just as the walls shifted again, revealing the exit. He stumbled out of the maze, his body covered in soot and sweat. The crowd was silent, their disbelief palpable. "He survived," one of the elders said, his voice barely a whisper. But Ethan didn't feel victorious. He turned back to the cliffs, searching for any sign of Vera. High above, Korath climbed toward a small cave where Vera was hidden. She heard him coming but didn't move. Instead, she focused her senses, listening to the vibrations of the rocks and the faint sounds of his breathing. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Korath said as he reached the cave. Vera didn't answer. "You've been helping the human," he continued, stepping closer. "You're a disgrace to the tribe. Do you really think anyone will accept you after this?" Vera tilted her head, her expression calm despite the danger. "Do you really think the tribe will accept a coward who can't win without sabotaging others?" Korath's face twisted with anger. He lunged at her, but Vera sidestepped with ease, using the vibrations to predict his movements. He stumbled, losing his footing on the rocky edge. "You?" Koreth growled, regaining his balance. Leave, Vera said quietly. You'll lose more than your pride if you stay. Koreth glared at her, but knew better than to push his luck. He climbed back down, his mind racing with plans for revenge. As the crowd celebrated Ethan's survival, Vera slipped away unnoticed. She knew the danger wasn't over, but for now, she allowed herself a small smile. The human had proven his strength, and so had she. But in the shadows, Koreth's hatred burned brighter than ever, setting the stage for the true battle yet to come. The hidden gift. Night fell over the Nurith village, the glow of twin moons casting silver light over jagged cliffs and shadowy alleys. Ethan sat by the dying embers of a fire, his body aching from the trials. The whispers of the villagers still echoed in his ears, murmurs of disbelief that a human could survive their deadly tests. But Ethan's thoughts weren't on the trials. They were on Vera. She had saved him twice, guiding him with an uncanny precision that defied explanation. He needed answers. As if summoned by his thoughts, a soft voice emerged from the darkness. "You're still alive," Vera said, stepping into the light. Ethan turned, surprised but relieved. "Thanks to you," he replied. "But I need to know how. How do you do it? How can you guide me through traps and mazes without even being there?" Vera hesitated, her cloudy eyes staring past him. "You wouldn't understand," she said softly. "Try me," Ethan pressed. For a moment, Vera considered walking away. She had hidden her gift for years, shielding it from the ridicule and fear of her tribe. But something about Ethan's persistence, his trust in her, made her feel safe enough to reveal the truth. She took a deep breath. "I can't see like you do. But that doesn't mean I'm blind. I've learned to see in other ways." Ethan frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Vera knelt beside him, picking up a small stone. "Throw this," she said. "What?" "Throw it. Anywhere." Ethan shrugged and tossed the stone into the darkness. It landed with a soft clink against a rock. "There," Vera said, pointing directly at the spot. Ethan's eyes widened. "How did you?" "I hear it," Vera explained. "The sound tells me where it is. The way it bounces, the way it moves through the air, it paints a picture in my mind. I can sense the shape of things, the distance, even the texture." Ethan stared at her, stunned. You use sound to see." "Not just sound," Vera continued. "Vibrations, shifts in energy, even the way the air feels when something moves. It's like the world speaks to me in ways others can't hear." Ethan let her words sink in. "And you've been hiding this from your people." Vera's expression hardened. They wouldn't understand. To them, I'm just the blind girl. Weak, useless. She clenched her fists. If they knew, they'd find a way to use me, or worse, cast me out for being different. Ethan shook his head. "They're fools if they can't see what you're capable of. You saved my life, Vera, twice." She gave him a small, sad smile. "But I didn't do it for them. I did it for me, to prove that I'm not what they think I am." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "You're more than that, Vera. You're incredible. And if they can't see it, then maybe it's time we show them." Vera looked away, her mind racing. Ethan's words stirred something inside her, a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. But before she could reply, a noise broke the quiet. Footsteps. Vera tensed, her head tilting slightly. "Someone's coming," she whispered. Ethan reached for a broken piece of metal near the fire, ready to defend himself. Out of the shadows stepped Koreth, his broad frame illuminated by the firelight. His eyes burned with anger and jealousy. "So," Koreth sneered, "the blind girl and the outsider, working together. I should have known." Ethan stood, his grip tightening on the metal shard. "Leave her alone," he said, his voice cold. Koreth laughed. "And what will you do, human? Fight me? You barely survived the trials, and that was with her help." He turned to Vera, his voice dripping with disdain. You think helping him will change anything. You're still nothing. You'll always be nothing. Vera didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped forward, her voice steady. You're wrong, Korath. I'm more than you'll ever be. And deep down, you know it. That's why you hate me. Korath's smirk faltered for a moment, but his anger flared again. Watch your tongue, girl, he growled, stepping closer. Before he could make another move, Vera tilted her head and spoke calmly. There's a ledge 3 steps to your left. If you take one more step forward, you'll fall. Korath hesitated, glancing nervously to his side. How do you know that? He demanded. Vera didn't answer. She simply stared at him, unblinking. Korath snarled, turning back to Ithan. This isn't over, he spat before retreating into the darkness. As the tension eased, Ithan turned to Vera, impressed. You weren't sure about the ledge, were you? She gave him a sly smile. No, but he didn't know that. Ithan laughed, shaking his head. Remind me never to get on your bad side. For the first time in years, Vera felt a sense of pride, not just in her abilities, but in the fact that someone finally saw her for who she truly was. But deep down, she knew Korath wouldn't give up so easily. The real battle was only just beginning. Betrayal. The village buzzed with restless energy as the next trial loomed. The elders whispered among themselves, their skepticism of Ithan's survival growing with each passing day. The warriors sharpened their weapons, their pride stung by the outsider's unexpected success. But none burned with hatred as fiercely as Korath. Korath stood in the shadows of the central hall, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd. He had seen enough. He knew the truth behind Ithan's miraculous victories, and he had no intention of keeping Vera's secret any longer. It's time the tribe knows what she's been hiding, Korath muttered to himself, a cruel grin spreading across his face. That evening, the council gathered in the great fire circle. Ithan stood at the center, his body still battered from the trials, but his resolve unshaken. Vera stayed in the shadows, as she always did, her presence unnoticed by most. The elder raised his staff. Tomorrow, the final trial will determine whether the outsider is worthy of our aid. But tonight, we must discuss the matter of fairness. Fairness? Ithan asked, his tone wary. Korath stepped forward, his voice loud and confident. This human hasn't survived the trials on his own, he declared, pointing an accusing finger. He's had help. From her. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Korath's words echoed in the circle. All eyes turned to Vera, who stepped reluctantly into the light. She's been guiding him, Korath continued, his tone dripping with disdain. Using her unnatural abilities. The elder frowned, his gaze shifting to Vera. Is this true? Vera stood tall, her voice steady despite the weight of their stares. I helped him, she admitted, but it was his strength and determination that got him through the trials. Not mine. Korath laughed bitterly. Don't lie to them. You've always been different, always hiding in the shadows, pretending you're just a blind girl. But we all know you're something else, something unnatural. Enough, Ithan said, stepping between Vera and the crowd. She saved my life. Without her, I wouldn't have survived. If you want to blame someone, blame me. The elder raised his hand, silencing the murmurs of the tribe. This is a serious accusation, he said gravely. If Vera has abilities she's hidden from us, she must prove their worth or face exile. Prove? Ithan snapped. She's already proved herself by helping me survive your impossible trials. But the elder shook his head. The tribe must see it for themselves. Tomorrow, during the final trial, Vera will guide you openly. If you both succeed, you will earn our trust. If you fail, the elder didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air. As the crowd dispersed, Vera and Ithan retreated to the edge of the cliffs. The night was silent, but their minds raced with the weight of what lay ahead. You didn't have to defend me, Vera said quietly, her voice tinged with gratitude. Of course I did, Ethan replied. You've done more for me than anyone here. I wasn't going to let them treat you like that. Vera sighed. They'll never see me as anything more than the blind girl, even if we succeed tomorrow. They will, Ethan said firmly. We'll show them. Together. But as they planned for the trial, Korath watched from the shadows, his anger boiling over. He wasn't done yet. He had one last card to play, one that would ensure Vera and Ethan's failure, and his own rise to power. The next morning, the tribe gathered for the final trial. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a mix of anticipation and doubt. As Ethan stepped into the arena, Vera stood at his side, her head held high. Korath smirked from his place among the warriors. He had rigged the trial, adding traps even Vera couldn't predict. The final trial wasn't just a test, it was a death sentence. But Vera didn't need her sight to sense the danger. As the elder raised his staff to signal the start, she whispered to Ethan, her voice calm but firm. Trust me. No matter what happens, trust me. Ethan nodded, his resolve unshaken. Together, they stepped into the trial, unaware that the greatest betrayal was yet to come. The ultimate test. The arena for the final trial was unlike anything Ethan had faced before. Massive stone pillars jutted out from the ground, forming a treacherous battleground. At the center stood the challenge, a hulking predator, its black scales shimmering in the sunlight. Its razor-sharp claws scratched at the ground, and its glowing yellow eyes locked onto Ethan with predatory intent. The villagers watched in tense silence. The elders sat on high platforms, their expressions unreadable. Ethan stood at the entrance of the arena, clutching a spear that looked woefully inadequate against the monstrous creature. At his side was Vera, standing tall despite the weight of countless judging eyes. The elder rose, his voice echoing across the arena. This is the final trial. Defeat the beast, and you both earn the tribe's respect and aid. Fail. And he didn't need to finish. The predator let out a bone-chilling roar that made the ground tremble. Ethan turned to Vera. You sure about this? Vera tilted her head, listening intently to the beast's movements. I can hear it breathe, Ethan. I can sense its strength, its weight. Trust me, if we work together, we can do this. Korath stood among the warriors, a sinister smirk on his face. He knew the predator well. It was a creature the tribe barely managed to capture for the trial, and he had secretly starved it to make it even more vicious. Let's see how long the blind girl's tricks last, he muttered. The elder lowered his staff. Begin. The beast lunged, its speed startling for something so large. Ethan barely dodged its claws, stumbling to the side as the crowd gasped. Vera's voice was calm but urgent. Right. Move right and stay low. Ethan obeyed, narrowly avoiding the creature's massive tail as it swung through the air. The crowd murmured in disbelief as Vera began issuing commands, her voice cutting through the chaos. Step back. Now forward. Jab its leg. Vera called out. Ethan followed her guidance, thrusting his spear at the beast's hind leg. The spear struck true, causing the creature to roar in pain. But the wound only seemed to enrage it further. The predator lashed out, forcing Ethan to dive behind one of the stone pillars. Stay behind the pillar. Vera yelled. It's circling you. Listen to its footsteps. It's lighter on its left side. It's injured. Ethan pressed his back to the pillar, listening. Sure enough, the beast's steps were uneven, its injured leg dragging slightly. Vera's instructions were saving his life, but the battle was far from over. Korath watched in growing frustration. How is she doing this? He hissed under his breath. He had rigged the trial, but Vera's uncanny ability to anticipate the beast's moves was undoing his plan. Now, Ethan, Vera shouted. It's lowering its head. Aim for its neck. Ethan darted out from the pillar, raising his spear. The beast lunged at him, jaws wide, but he sidestepped at the last moment. plunging the spear into its neck. The creature howled, stumbling backward as dark blood poured from the wound. The crowd erupted into cheers, but the celebration was short-lived. The beast wasn't dead. It rose to its full height, shaking with rage. It let out a guttural roar, and for the first time, Ethan felt doubt creeping in. "It's not enough," he muttered. Vera's head snapped toward the sound of the beast's growl. She focused, her mind racing. Then she heard it, the faint hum of an unstable energy field buried beneath the arena floor. "Ethan," she yelled, "there's a weak spot in the ground near the beast. We can use it." "What are you talking about?" Ethan asked, panting. "The ground. It's hollow in one spot. If we can lure it there, the weight will collapse it." Ethan nodded, trusting her completely. He moved to the left, taunting the beast. "Come on, you ugly thing. Over here." The predator charged, its massive body shaking the ground with each step. Vera listened intently, guiding Ethan with precise instructions. 3 more steps. Now jump to the side. Ethan dove out of the way just as the beast reached the weak spot. The ground cracked and collapsed beneath its weight, sending the predator plunging into a hidden pit below. A deafening roar echoed as the beast disappeared into the darkness. Silence fell over the arena. Then the crowd erupted into cheers and applause. The elders rose, their expressions a mix of shock and admiration. Even Korath couldn't hide his disbelief. Vera stepped forward, her face calm but proud. Ethan stood beside her, battered but victorious. Together, they had done what no one thought possible. The elder raised his hand, calling for silence. "You have both proven yourselves," he said, his voice resonating with respect. "Vera, your abilities are extraordinary. You have shown that strength comes in many forms. And Ethan, your determination has earned our aid." The crowd cheered again, but Korath's face darkened. He wasn't done with them yet. As Ethan and Vera left the arena, victorious but wary, they couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenge was still to come. In the shadows, Korath's hatred burned brighter than ever. Redemption. The celebration was brief. Just as the tribe began to acknowledge Vera and Ethan's triumph, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. The air grew heavy, and the distant sound of war horns echoed through the cliffs. The elders exchanged worried glances. "The Ultran tribe," one muttered, his voice trembling. "They've come to claim what they believe is theirs," another elder said, gesturing toward the lush valley beyond the cliffs. "They will destroy everything if we don't surrender." Panic rippled through the crowd. The Ultrans were known for their brutality, and their warriors were unmatched in strength and cunning. The Nureth tribe had always relied on their sight and speed to outmaneuver enemies, but now, faced with an army, fear spread like wildfire. Ethan tightened his grip on his spear. "We need to prepare," he said, stepping forward. The elder shook his head. "You don't understand. They are too many. Even with your strength, we cannot win." A voice broke through the despair. "We don't need to outfight them," Vera said, stepping into the center of the fire circle. "We just need to outsmart them." The crowd fell silent, all eyes on Vera. Some looked skeptical, others intrigued. "What can you do, blind girl?" Korath sneered, stepping forward with a mocking grin. Vera turned her head toward him, her expression calm but unyielding. "I've spent my life listening, feeling, sensing things you'll never notice. And right now, I can feel the vibrations of their footsteps. They're close but scattered. If we move quickly, we can use the terrain to our advantage." Korath laughed bitterly. "And why should we trust you? You're the one who brought this outsider here, the one woe." "Enough," the elder interrupted, his staff striking the ground. He turned to Vera. "If you have a plan, speak it." Vera took a deep breath. "The cliffs are unstable. If we guide the Ultrans into the narrow passes, we can trigger a collapse and trap their forces. It won't defeat all of them, but it will give us a chance to fight back on even ground. The warriors murmured among themselves. It was a risky plan, but it was the only plan. "I'll help," Ethan said. "Vera can guide us, but we'll need to move fast." The elder nodded reluctantly. "Very well. Gather the warriors. We'll follow your lead, Vera." The tribe moved quickly, positioning themselves along the cliffs. Vera stood at the edge, her head tilted as she listened to the distant sound of marching feet. "They're coming from the north and east," she said. "Koreth, take your group to the northern pass. Ethan, you'll lead the others to the eastern ridge." "And what will you do?" Koreth asked with a sneer. Vera turned toward him, her voice steady. "I'll be at the central pass. That's where the collapse must happen." Ethan stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "You'll be right in the middle of the danger." "I know," Vera said softly. "But this is the only way." The Ultran army arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon, their massive forms casting long shadows over the cliffs. The Nurith warriors held their positions, waiting for Vera's signal. Vera stood at the central pass, her hands pressed to the ground. She felt the vibrations of the Ultran army growing stronger, their movements predictable yet overwhelming. She closed her eyes, focusing all her senses. "Now," she shouted. Ethan and Koreth led their groups, triggering small rock slides to block the Ultrans' escape routes. Confusion spread through the invading army as they were funneled into the narrow passes. At the central pass, Vera timed her movements perfectly. Using a long staff to strike the ground in specific spots, she created fractures in the rock. With a final strike, the cliff face gave way, sending a massive avalanche of stone cascading down onto the Ultrans below. The ground shook violently, and the sound of crashing rocks drowned out the screams of the invaders. When the dust settled, the Ultran army was trapped, their forces decimated. The Nurith warriors emerged from their hiding spots, their cheers echoing through the valley. For the first time in generations, they had defeated the Ultran tribe. As the tribe gathered around the central pass, Vera stood silently, her face streaked with dust and sweat. Ethan approached her, a look of awe on his face. "You did it," he said. "We did it," Vera replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. The elder stepped forward, his expression one of deep respect. "Vera, you've shown us the strength we refused to see. You've saved us all." The tribe erupted into applause, their once doubtful voices now filled with admiration. Even Koreth, though reluctant, gave a nod of acknowledgement. For the first time in her life, Vera felt truly seen, not as the blind girl, but as a leader, a savior, and a symbol of strength. As the villagers began to rebuild, Ethan prepared to leave. His ship was repaired, but his bond with Vera and the Nurith tribe would remain. "Will I see you again?" Vera asked as Ethan prepared to board his ship. Ethan smiled. "Count on it. The universe needs more people like you." As his ship disappeared into the sky, Vera turned back to her tribe. She had proven herself and changed the way they saw her, and she knew her journey was far from over.